weird. Do you ever argue, or have you just learned what buttons not to press?
I think that's what happens is you just argue all the time, and then it becomes not really much of a thing. Yeah, there's definitely button pressing, but that's what I meant by being like brothers too, because if someone's like bitching about something, they don't usually get their way because there's 5 other people that are like pushing all the buttons to piss them off again or whatever, and then it just blows over. We've definitely learned, there were some humps to do that, because we're like almost 20 years into this, so there were definitely certain speed bumps in that relationship building phase, where you don't really know, you get pissed at each other and we'll have these things, but now we're so far past all that anytime you're pissed at someone, it's not, you're only mad for like 5 seconds, and then you're laughing 20 minutes later.
It's alright.
As you said before, pens dispensers thrown at you. Is there any items that have been like, what's your weirdest find, like that someone's thrown on stage?
Well, other than like giant heaps of mud at some German festival, there was this one at Southside where it was, it had been raining all day or whatever, and when we first started playing, they were kind of throwing mud at each other back and forth in the crowd, and we were like, oh, this is going to be not good. One comes up here, and then all of a sudden, one came on stage and someone said something, and then all of a sudden, there were patties like this big of like mud and cow shit and hay, and so it was like a hunk. It wasn't just like, ooh, it splattered me a little bit. It was like one hit me in the horn, and it cut my lip. One hit me in the thigh, and it seriously stung for like fucking 10 minutes. It was like big wads of stuff coming up. Whole stage was covered in mud. You're slipping and sliding all over the place. It ended up being a pretty funny show or whatever, but it was that was pretty weird and uncomfortable. What else has come up? I mean, obviously, girls' bras and stuff come up all the time, and then I take those and wear them in my weird fetish late at night. I'm trying to think of something really weird that's come up. I got like a weird stuffed monkey the other day, which I thought was just like a little stuffed animal, until like I got it, I was like, oh, I'll save this, and I put it in my trombone case, and when I set it down, it went, ah! And they like crazy noises and started moving around. I was like, ah! Kind of freaked me out a little bit.
What separates the UK fans to the American fans? Are they similar? Or is
well, there's the accent. Well, that's pretty much it. And you guys can start drinking at a younger age, so you're outside fucking, like people that I think look like they're like 5 are outside drinking tall cans of beer, and I'm like, how the hell's that happening? So you do get a little more unruly sometimes. But yeah, it is pretty similar, the crowds going on in both places. I mean, there was a point where we got a little bit bigger over here than we kind of died off a little bit in the US, and so there were more people here, but it's like, it's very comparable as far as like the kind of crowd and what people are doing, and I don't know, it's good.
We've got a question from Carl Sturdy from Birmingham, and he asks, does it feel weird being back in the UK after being 2 years away?
No, it actually feels like we never left. It's so weird, like especially since we play a lot of the same places. Like I walked in today and I was like, I know exactly where I am, and I know exactly what this looks like inside. I know, it's like, it's really weird having come to some of these places so many times that you just start to get really used to it. And we were in Japan right before this, and that even is starting to feel like that was the craziest place whenever I went there. I was like, oh, I'm definitely in a foreign country, and you feel like all the food's different, everybody's Japanese, and that's a huge difference. And here you kind of blend in a little bit because we're all basically from the same crop of people. But that used to be the weirdest thing ever for me. And this last time we went there, I was kind of like, we're in Japan, so I know exactly what it's like. And we've played a lot of those same places too. So you walk in the place, you know where you are. You leave your hotel, you know where to go. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, I feel like I've been to Manchester so many times that I know what it's like. I know what to expect. And so it's not that weird anymore. But being away for a couple of years, I was actually excited. So many people were still at the shows and stuff. Like it could have just died off. We were like, ooh, less than what? But it's all these shows are great. So
where do you prefer in the UK? Is there any specific point?
I know this is going to sound totally cheesy, but I really do like Manchester a lot. There's hot girls walking around. I mean, I know we're right on the campus right now, but we look out the window, it's like, oh my god. Like every person that walks by, I'm looking at the dudes, and I'm like, this dude is pretty hot. But the city's pretty cool. It just seems like, I don't know, it's anything that has a college in it. Like when it's a college town, it always has like, more liberal, kind of artsy vibe to it. Where else is cool here? That's it. No. I mean, we played Oxford first. I like walking around Oxford just because that's got like the cool, like the whole campus there. The buildings are all old. Everywhere in Europe's cool for us because in the States, like if a building's 50 years old, it's like the craziest thing ever. Whereas here, you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you see a castle. You're like, wow, that's been there forever. And if you think about like people storming the castle and all that kind of shit while you're walking next to like a Sainsbury's or whatever, and you're like, it's so weird, like picturing people getting hot oil dumped on them like right down the street or whatever. It's a little crazy.
You've left independent and major record labels. What was the decision setting up records?
Well, we've kind of actually done that a couple times now, which is really weird. We've gone back and forth between that stuff all the time, and it's pretty much the same thing every time. You get fed up with the first time we left like Capitol, it was we were fed up with the whole thing, or we actually got kicked off of Capitol, I think, at that point. And then we went to Fat, and then we made the decision to try and jump back into the major label world and go for that thing. It was before like the downloading thing had really taken off, and like kind of the music industry had started changing. So we got in there right in the last bit of like we could still actually go do this and try and make something big on a major label. But after being there for a couple of years again, we realized it did change. Like everything kind of took a turn. And you don't really need them anymore. Like the internet is such a huge marketing tool, and the power has really been given back to the people that are in the band to do whatever they want. And a lot of bands get screwed now because they don't use that, and they're still trying to get on a major label. And now major labels are freaking out and struggling, so they try to take everything from the band they can when they sign you. They don't get shit anymore. And they sign what's called 360 deals, where they take your merch and part of your touring and part they want everything that you do. They want a piece of it because they're not making money on selling music anymore. So, but what they have to offer these days is not as much as what they used to. They used to have like their big machine that they'd plug you into, and there was no other real way to get anywhere. And now like you just use the way to talk to your fans through like Facebook or Twitter, and and it's a ridiculous tool because that's all people really need to know is when you're playing and when your stuff's coming out, and that's where kids go find that stuff out now. It's like they're not like checking the actual AP magazine. They'll go to AP.com or whatever. Like nobody reads print. Nobody goes to a lot of people don't really listen to the radio anymore. They'll listen to stuff online or podcasts or what, and you can get on that stuff all yourself. But you just have to be proactive about it and be, we've always kind of come from that route anyway, where we did a lot of the stuff ourselves, where we were on top of the business and all that kind of thing. And you just have to, not be the band that's out there non-stop partying all the time and not caring about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we went back and decided to just do it ourselves because we already kind of were anyway.
All right, fair enough.
So is Sleep It Off Records eventually going to take on other rising acts, or is it just...
I think we just kind of emerged that just to put our own stuff out. There was talk about it at first of like, well, if we, once we get things rolling and we're all solid on what we're doing, then maybe if we all can agree on something, we'll start working on other bands. But then Vinny started his own record label, and so he's out of the mix. Not like trying to start another label and have other bands. I think it's just not. That's really basically just for us,
Right.
So Paper and Plastic is Vinny's record label, and he has already too many bands to handle. He already signed a whole crap load of people. So.
Oh, God.
You're nearing 19 years as a band. If you had to sum it all up and put your highlights, what would they be?
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, that's a hard sum up because it would take 40 minutes just to sum that up. But you touched on one of the Bon Jovi tour, being able to say that we toured with Bon Jovi, just like the experience of being on one of those huge big arena tours. And we did that with Newfound Glory and Good Charlotte too. It was like a kind of an arena tour, but didn't seem as crazy because we'd already toured with Newfound Glory and they were supporting us, and so like we already knew them. So it wasn't really like the same thing as like when you were in 8th grade watching Bon Jovi on TV and like, I want to be that guy, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you're on this tour with this crazy lifestyle. And then we toured with a band called The Descendants a long time ago, and they were huge influences. I think that's the biggest thing about the fact that we've been a band so long is that we've gone from saying, these people are our influence, like when people are like, oh, who influenced you? We've played with all those people now, and like you consider a lot of them our friends. Like we've been on tour with Bad Religion and NoFX and The Descendants and All and Snuff and all these bands that we used to be in, Green Day, and all these bands that we were like, God, it used to be like this out of touch entity that was like, wow, these are these people that are in these bands that we'll never get to meet or never, but we listen to their music and they're helping inspire us. But now we're like, you get even more inspiration once you're playing with them and then you're friends with them and you've got their email and you're talking to them and they're mastering your record, and it's like it's weird when you've gotten to the point where you're like in with that. So I think that's one of the biggest highlights. Before I thought that we made it as a band. We got our first Pezcore CD. We were on our first tour. We're like, man, we're on a CD. This is crazy. I can't believe it. Now people are like, what the hell's a CD? First time we got like a vinyl record back too. It was like, wow, well, we made it. Or we played at the Hardback, which is in Gainesville, and it was like sold out to 200 people. I was like, God, this is huge. So like all these little baby dreams keep getting met, and I think that's what's really cool about our band is that it's just steadily keeps getting better.
Yeah.
So when was it you realised that the band was more than just a hobby and became a full-time?
Well, for me it was weird because it kind of just was a gradual process too. I was in college when I started, and I was actually lucky enough to graduate right before we did our first tour. So we had been doing like shows around Florida, and we'd gone up to Atlanta and had like, you know, touring in the van and done like some weekend shows, and we'd play like 3 times a month in Gainesville and all this kind of stuff. Then we took our first U.S. tour the summer after I graduated college, and I even right before that went to Germany and Holland and stuff, and rode my bike around and camped with my friends, did the whole like Europe trip, you know. And right when I got back from that, it was like 4 days later, we left in the van for like 6 weeks and went around the U.S. And so I graduated college, and then all of a sudden I'm in the van, and I remember having to make the call to my parents and be like, look, so I'm not going to go to grad school yet. I think this band's got potential, so I'm going to give it a year. And then, you know, the next year I was like, oh, it's doing good, I'm going to give it another year. And then like next year, you know, it's like fucking 400 years later, and here I am, still doing it. But yeah, so it wasn't really like a certain point where it was like I knew that this is what I was going to do, because it kept being like this thing that I was like, oh, well, I'm going to keep doing it until, you know, it's not working anymore, and then it just kept working. So it was just like a gradual thing. And then for Chris and Roger, it's different because they had to actually quit school to do that first. Like they did the first 2 years of college, and I think then they quit. I think it was their 3rd year or something like that. That they were like, and it was like, well, we're just gonna have to quit school and just go on the road, kind of thing. You know, so I think for them that would probably be the defining point.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, once we started touring, and that's what I did for, instead of being, you know, on the dude in school and I got this band or whatever. But when it was like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And that's what a band really has to do. Like a lot of times that's what holds people back. They've got like jobs, and it's like, oh, we can only tour like these 3 weeks, and then, oh no, he can't do it because his job is this, and he can only get off in March on this week, so we'll go on spring break, and then you tour like twice out of like every 2 years or something, and you know, your band never really goes anywhere. So you really have to be like, okay, this is what we're doing. Everybody's like, you know, put your hand in the pot and go for it.
Yeah.
What are your plans after this tour? Is it to continue promoting your EP, or are you having a look at doing more albums, another tour?
Wait, what was the first part of that?
What are your plans after this tour?
Oh.
Is it to continue promoting your EP?
Yeah, well, we actually have right when we get back from this, well, we're home for like December and holidays and a little bit in January, but then, yeah, we are going to go out in the U.S. for another month, and then at the end of that, we go to Australia. That ends in like California, and then we fly over to Australia for a Soundwave Festival. So when we get back from that, we're hopefully we have like some shells of songs. After we did the TV EP, we started writing some stuff, so we have some ideas there, and then we're going to try and, you know, work on that a little more in January when we're home, and then yeah, there's definitely plans to put some more stuff out, but we do have some touring before that, and then hopefully we get back in March and we'll get something down.
Yeah.
And figure out where it goes from there. But no actual plans for what it's going to be yet, whether it's going to be a record or more EPs. It's not going to be another cover thing. We're definitely writing our own stuff, for sure.
Cameron, yeah. That's all the questions we needed to ask, so thanks for the interview.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
I love thanks. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, mate.